Check this out. Jews, the Jews. See what happened here? In your gut, something, you reacted, right? The idea, even the word, is something no one is indifferent to. But why? What's the story here? You think that after 4,000 years of recorded history, we'd have figured out this strange, almost universal hatred of the Jews, but we haven't. You know what? We're going to have to start to figure it out.
If statistics are right, the Jews constitute but 1% of the human race. It suggests a nebulous, dim puff of stardust lost in the blaze of the Milky Way. Properly, the Jew ought hardly to be heard of, but he is heard of, has always been heard of. The Egyptian, the Babylonian, and the Persian rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, then faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greek and the Roman followed and made a vast noise, and they're gone. Other people have sprung up, held their torch high for a time, but it burned out, and they sit in twilight now or have vanished. The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality? Mark Twain, concerning the Jews.
Mark Twain, yeah. So, people really gave their mind to this problem. It wasn't... People always thought about it. Like we tend to think about it as something, isolated to an event here or there. There was the Holocaust, there was this, there was that. But no, this is a perennial issue. It's there. It's always there. It's always in the background somehow. And that's why I don't think we can just write it off with some, it's the president, people, they're the scapegoats, people envy this, people don't know that. No, there's got to be something deeper. Let's figure it out. Let's take the emotion out of it. Look at things scientifically, empirically. There are facts. The details of any experiment that's been going on for as long as this one has are considered as facts. So let's consider them. So what exactly is the Jewish problem? Is it genocide, their right to self-defense, envy, bigotry, tribalism? No. The problem is that no one, and I mean no one, including the Jews, know what Jews are and what their role is in the world, or that they even have one. Wait. What do you mean? How can the oldest surviving grouping of humans in the history of the planet not know who they are? They're a race, right? Because if your mom's a Jew, you're a Jew. But actually, there were times in history where if your father was Jewish, you were also Jewish. And clearly, all you have to do is take one look at Jews and see they're a hodgepodge of races. That's because they're religion, right? Wrong. The majority who identify as Jews are secular, and the ones you're probably most aware of are strongly anti-religious. Fine, they're a state, like the US, or a legal entity like Canada. But more Jews live outside of Israel than inside Israel. So what are those Jews? You see the problem? Every definition is a contradiction.
Okay.
Last week.
Which cycle?
The cycle where I just look at Twitter, someone yelled at Jews, "Get the fuck off my earth." So that's a very specific directive. I want to break that cycle. And I believe with all my heart that everything we have been doing so far is not working. Yeah. I'm not writing the efforts, but none of those things gets to the root of the issue. This is an irrational hatred. It's almost counterintuitive that so many people would harbor such feelings of animosity to the one group that's really without kind of patting ourselves on the shoulder gave so much to humanity, right? There's more Nobel Prize winners per capita among the Jewish people. So what are Jews? Why do we feel the way we do about it? The Jews are the hubs. For as long as we've collected population stats, no other grouping comes even close to its constant degree distribution throughout the network. But that in itself is not proof, unless, of course, there's other evidence that they exclusively and consistently performed the same analogous function as the hubs. So did they? See, from the time we first became a complex system called civilization, the history of the Jews has been one of successive invasions, exiles, captivity, genocide and generally forced mixture into the expanding empires of the region. While other people stayed put when their borders and national names changed, the Jews were never allowed to isolate in their land for long. Whenever the system grew, they were scattered, carrying with them a cohesive community connected around mutual support and centered around an educational system all about their responsibility in relation to others. Remember all those stories? The Egyptian exile, Joseph, prime minister, steward, and distributor of resources. Moses, adopted prince, liberator of humanity. The Babylonian exile, Daniel, prime minister. And Mordecai, protector of the king's life and liberator. Not the king, not the principle of expansion and separation, rather the principle of cohesion and connection, whose only job is taking care of the needs of the kingdom's parts. The Jew function. As the Roman Empire swallowed up the small networks, nations around the Mediterranean, Jews were pushed to the centers of the New World. As the empire recedes, they find themselves restricted just about anywhere by laws preventing integration, owning property, working in almost all professions. What's left? They're relegated to being tax and rent collectors for kingdoms and governments. Over time, money lending and financing national projects. It really was the needs and natural suspicion of those systems in those countries that placed them as the builders of an international system of finances and trade that carried with it the spread of resources and ideas. That was their role, and that's still the case today. We still feel that Jews dominate the networks that inform and connect us. I mean, look around you. Hollywood, social media, the arts, news, financial markets, electronic media, science, patents. And add to this the unique perpetual survival, and the evidence points to the fact that Jews, whether by birth or conversion, or even those who simply share similar inclinations, are the function of hubs in the human network. And here's the kicker. It's an integral, holistic system. So every human being in the system carries within them both qualities, hub and node, the Jew function and the Gentile function, operating in and around them.
Probably the most infamous anti-Semite in American history was industrialist and carmaker Henry Ford. In his infamous composition, I couldn't believe it when I first saw that Henry Ford wrote a book called, what would he call, The International Jew, the World's Foremost Problem. Henry Ford wrote that book. I couldn't believe it when I first saw that.
I know.
In Henry Ford's infamous composition, Ford interlaced some very curious statements that do not sound as though they came from the mind of a Jew hater. Quote, "The whole prophetic purpose, with reference to the people of Israel, seems to have been the moral enlightenment of the world through its agency," he wrote in one place. Ford writes several other statements in a similar spirit about the expectation of the world from the Jews to be agents of a positive change. But the answer as to what positive change he has in mind is found almost at the very beginning of the book. Quote, "Modern reformers who are constructing model social systems on paper would do well to look into the social system under which the early Jews were organized."
Jews are a kind of nation of hubs in their human network, structured so that any major or minor impulse of system development that enters the system has to first go through the hubs, through the Jew function. For that to happen, Jews have to connect in a way that resembles the higher quality of the system where those impulses originate. They have to connect up in an open, inclusive, mutually responsive, altruistic way, sort of quantum love your neighbor as yourself program, a conduit made of human unity designed to minimize the resistance to impulses entering the system while maximizing the spread of awareness and new ideas to every node. A natural inborn grasp of what next steps to take in order to ensure the survival of the system.
You guys are supposed to unite each other, but you're not even united. And then all of a sudden there's different Jews pushing different things than the Gentiles. They're going to go, wait a minute, what the hell are you? You don't even practice what you preach. That's the number one thing, is hypocrisy. So throughout history, it's hypocrisy. It's, oh, well, for example, a lot of people say, white nationalists will say, well, Israel is an ethno state and they have closed borders, but then they push open borders on our white European states. That's a good criticism. You know, I've seen people who are white nationalists say to a Jewish guy, hey, would you open borders Israel? No, of course not. Well, why the hell are you pushing it here in Europe? This is an argument that they make. And so it's hypocrisy that they don't like about the Jews. If the Jews were, like you said, this priestly class of unite everyone, and they weren't pushing stuff in Hollywood. They weren't putting Sam Bankman-Fried, kind of people, Bernie Madoff. Who would care? It would add more Jews.
Maybe
give
the
us
reverse.
more.
Maybe
give us more. Yeah,
Maybe
but give us more.
positively.
Like if the Jewish community was at its peak, united, loving, care, and you guys became a beacon of light, like light unto the world, like you're supposed to be according to your religion or ideology, we would want more Jews. Like, give us more. Like, would you not want more people who, let's suppose a certain group of Europeans are great engineers. I want more. Build us all the bridges. Here are all the contracts. Take it. So if there was a class of Jews who were like, hey, look, we have problem-solving skills, intercommunity, we could solve this, and you solve it without pushing and coercing on people through your example. Like, wow, look at these Jews, man.
I think, Seth, we're at this point in time, although we have to cross a certain gap here, and we will circle back to it. But I think now, maybe today, it's great. Let's read those few excerpts that talk about how it could be like, right? What can that unity feel like? What can that feeling of togetherness be like? Let's read from this paragraph.
The Antiquity of the Jews
in this book.
by
Yeah,
Flavius
exactly.
Josephus.
Yeah.
Okay. So Josephus writes that the pilgrims would make acquaintance, maintained by conversing together and by seeing and talking with one another, and so renewing the recollections of this union.
Keep going.
Once they entered Jerusalem, the pilgrims were greeted with open arms. The townsfolk let them into their homes and treated them as family. And there was always room for everyone.
Always.
The Mishnah relishes this rare camaraderie. All the craftsmen in Jerusalem would stand before them and ask about their well-being. Our brothers, men of such and such a place, have you come in peace? And the flute would play before them until they arrived at the Temple Mount. Additionally, all the material needs of every person who came to Jerusalem were met in full. One did not say to one's friend, I could not find an oven on which to roast an offering in Jerusalem, or I could not find a bed to sleep in Jerusalem. Even better, the unity and warmth among the Hebrews projected outward and became a role model for the neighboring nations. This era in the history of our nation is probably the only time where we could see a living proof that the antidote to Jew hatred was not assimilation, but rather enhanced internal union. Historian Paul
That's important.
Johnson,
Not to try to be like everyone, but to really lead the way on how to connect, how to be together. This is phenomenal.
It's in our hands.
It's in our hands. I really hope that we
to
can
love each other.
Yeah, we can remind people that we have the power to do it. Jewish people we just have to jog our memory. We have that capacity.
So, do Jews know that this is what they are? Very, very few would. And considering the state of the world, unlike in the past, our hubs are barely able to maintain the existence of the system. So, no, the Jew function is sleeping. They're just as confused as everyone else as to what they are, what their role is, what purpose they serve in the system, and why they exert so much influence and attract so much hatred. So, there you go. The Jewish problem isn't one of race, religion, nationality, culture. No, it's simply an integral part of the system. It's this deeply programmed need to ensure its survival, which motivates the suspicion and hatred towards the Jews. Let's try this again, shall we? Jew. Jews. The Jews. Did that feel any different?